Welcome to the latest episode of Lifts. In this episode, recorded live at IHRSA 2024, Mo Iqbal and myself are joined by two incredibly inspirational individuals whose vision, ambition, and leadership are pioneering the evolution of the fitness sector. I'm sure you'll enjoy this unique episode with Mr. Anthony Geisler, founder and CEO of Xponential Fitness, and Philipp Roesch-Schlanderer, founder and CEO of EGYM. If you get anything from this episode at all, I would just ask if you please subscribe to the channel and share it with one other person, which will help us to continue to create more content like this. So please enjoy this week's special episode of Lifts.
So Anthony, welcome to the Lifts podcast, live here at IHRSA. We appreciate you coming on. You are the founder, director, and CEO of Xponential Fitness.
Yep. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, happy to be on.
Anthony, give us a little bit of background. What was the vision for setting up Xponential at the time that you did?
Yeah, I mean, originally it was, the founding of Club Pilates, my acquisition of it from Allison Beardsley back in 2015. We grew the business, from a dozen or so locations to, what today is 1,000 open. But after about 2 years, I worked with TPG to kind of exit the business and then partner with them to really kind of create this portfolio approach. I mean, a lot of people had taken shots at it in the fitness, space that didn't really pan out. You've seen it at driven brands on the automotive side. So there's been portfolio aggregators in industries, and originally it was a private equity person that, had kind of approached me with it, a guy named Mark Magliacano from El Catterton. He was like, hey, look, no one's kind of done this space at the time. They own Peloton, they own Pure Barre, they own Core Power Yoga, and I had Club Pilates. And so the conversation then was, hey, look, let's put all these together and you run it. And so they ended up bringing TPG in the mix. Long story short, I ended up doing my deal with TPG. We ended up going back and buying Pure Barre from Mark, as maybe brand 6 or 7 or wherever that might have been at the time. But I teamed up with a guy named Mark Grabowski over at TPG, and we grew the portfolio. Right, a lot of it came out of Dave Long at Orange Theory as he was building OTF. I would constantly get lead flow into Club Pilates, and they would say, hey, yeah, I called Orange Theory, and those guys didn't call me back. And I'm like, well, they didn't call you back because they sold out 8 years ago, right? There's, kind of the front end of a franchisor. You spend the first year or two, selling franchises, and then the next time starting to get over, get them open. And so, there's 1,000 Club Pilates open today, and not many people know what Club Pilates actually is, right? And so eventually people start to find out about something like an Orange Theory or a Club Pilates. And at that point, it's been around for a dozen years, right? And so I was seeing that Orange Theory had a lot of this lead flow coming in, and they can't sell anything, right? Because there's no more territories to sell, and you don't want to oversaturate your market. So with that, I actually approached Orange Theory at one point with Club Pilates and said, I'll buy your lead flow, right? The people that want an Orange Theory, I'll talk to them about, possibly buying a Club Pilates. And so as time went on, I ended up with that same problem with, good problem to have, but people wanting Club Pilates and us not having a home for them. And so with that, all those things going on simultaneously really brought on the idea of Xponential, which originally was called BIF, Big Ideas in Fitness Franchising. But I don't want to be Anthony at biff.com. And so we spent some time to, kind of brand and think about what we would do. And, the name Xponential was never really supposed to be out there in the space. It was just supposed to be kind of behind the scenes parent company, which is why if you look at our filing, it was originally called H&W Investco, which was Health and Wellness Investment Company, right? So it was really just supposed to, all these other names that it had didn't really matter because it didn't matter. But then when you came to exhibit at, Recon on Real Estate or, IHRSA or something like that, it's like, well, what's your brand? It's like, oh, we're Club Pilates, Cycle Bar, Row House, this, that, whatever, right? And so Xponential, kind of got born out of necessity to really have a brand for the portfolio.
So I think when Xponential was formed, and congratulations on all this success, but you were kind of at the peak and rode the wave of the growth of boutique fitness, right? And you've kind of acquired these brands, which gives a really strong offering to the consumer. As you're thinking about the next 5, the next 10 years, what are the trends, or where are consumers shifting? One of the things that we've seen a lot is the growth of wearables, the growth of wellness and health kind of been integrated here.
Yep.
How do you see that playing a role into what's next for Xponential?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a holistic approach to health and wellness, right, is what we're going to see. Just came out of a meeting and we're talking about the tech, we're talking about wearables. You go to CES today and the sort of health and wellness category there before didn't exist. And today it's its own hall, right? At least that's what the people at the last meeting were saying, right? I haven't seen it with my own eyes, but if all that is true, we're seeing that kind of around, right? You're seeing it with pharmaceuticals like GLP-1s, which I'm sure we'll get into. But this isn't so much like people just kind of go on their own, go take a 1-hour class, and there's no community, right? Boutique fitness really it's specialized, but it's also a specialized community, right? When you tell people all the time, if you're a part of the Porsche Club of America, that's a lot different than just being a part of the Car Club of America, right? And what's the difference, right? Everybody there loves a Porsche. Otherwise, why in the Porsche Club of America, right? As opposed to loving cars. So when you see this kind of shift in big box, and my big box brothers, I love them. They do a great job. So no knock on big box. But when you go into a big box branded facility, like you don't know why people are there. It might be for weight training, could be for stretching, could be for basketball, could be, my dad is a member at Lifetime and he just goes and uses the steam room and the sauna and showers. Like the guy does nothing as far as, like a fitness piece, but he loves it for that, right? And so when I'm walking in with somebody into Lifetime, I don't know what they're into. They could be there to get their nails done, right? Yeah. So different offering. If I'm walking into a Pure Barre, I know exactly what they're going to do. I go into a cycle bar, I know they're into cycling. Otherwise, they're just in the wrong building. Right. And so that's what builds that community in boutique. And so I think as that boutique wave rode, as you're talking about, and as wearables get worn, right, and as pharmaceuticals or scripts start to play, whether it's, places like Game Day with HRT, which is really TRT, right? Because, women aren't going to a place called Game Day to get hormone replacement therapy. But as you kind of look at that, it's like, how do those act as a catalyst for people, right? I mean, look, we all know how to lose weight, right? It's called eat less, move more, right? That's what it is, but that's pretty easy. It's like we all know how to make money. It's like go out and work harder, right? Well, that's great, but then step 2 is kind of how do you get that done, right? And so if you're able to encourage people via community, right? You're able to engage via wearable. You're able to have catalysts like HRT, IV therapy, GLP-1s or things like that can act as a catalyst for people to go diet, exercise, and kind of this holistic wellness approach, right? You see it in the medical field too, because now these wearables actually deliver information back to medical doctors, right? And so it becomes this 360 approach, right? It becomes 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional, 5-dimensional when it used to be 1-dimensional before.
What are you seeing? Or what's your perspective on the challenges? Clearly a lot of people in the boutique space, which you guys operate, have had a difficult time. A lot of them have not made it through. You guys have obviously got a very successful formula. You continue to grow. Do you share the same perspective of there is challenges at the moment in the industry? And if so, what are some of the things that Xponential are doing to help their franchisees deal with a fairly difficult global economy at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the macro has become that was a 6-month ago story. I'm constantly talking to investors, obviously, both public and private, and you'll hear different themes, right? Themes will come through. This last year, it was, student loan debt is coming, and people aren't, the sky's going to fall in September when everybody gets their student loan debt, right? And the sky didn't fall. It was leverage and high interest rates and inflation and the macro. I haven't gotten the macro questions in the last 6 months, and so that's good news. That means that people aren't highly focused on that, right? We spent a year talking about the impending recession, then we spent another year and then another year, right? And so thank God, kind of knock on wood, we haven't seen that, right? We're still continuing at least at Xponential, to see consumer demand continue to increase, right? You see our average unit volumes continue to climb. I mean, 23, now 24, I think it is, quarters in a row, 9 before COVID, the balance after COVID of the average revenue for a franchisee growing, right? You look at same store sales comps, they used to be 8%, 5 to 8% is great in consumer. That's kind of where they peg boutique fitness, right? And so we saw that pre-COVID. We're seeing twice that now in a post-COVID world, right? 16% this last year in 2023, and 17% for our stores that were 3 years and older. So this isn't new stores coming on. This is vintage stores as well, still continuing to perform. Now, that will normalize over time, right? It's kind of like a car getting up to 300 miles an hour. It's hard to stay at 300 miles an hour, right? You just have mathematical numerators and denominators. As we opened 557 clubs last year, we opened 160 of those in Q4 and 90 of them in December. So when you look at the run rate of 2023, we're opening a club every 15 hours. But in December, we were opening 3 clubs every day, right? So, kind of a different situation. And so you're still seeing demand for franchisees to buy franchises. I mean, we sold over 800 franchises last year. Like I said, opened 557 stores. 75% of those openings are domestic. 25% of those are global. So you're seeing the global footprint doing really well. You see brands like Club Pilates have 45 open units in Japan. We have 7 brands in Japan. So APAC is continued to remain very strong, right? BFT and Stretch Lab and Rumble and Club Pilates and all these different brands that we now have today in the APAC region. So where we used to be a 90-10 business domestic, we're now, a 75-25 business domestic. And so you're still seeing international demand for those boutique fitness where the wave is starting, right? And not riding and or finishing. So
I mean, just going back to the macro question, I think, so the macro question in terms of consumer activity and consumer intent is still high, right? That has not really come through. Has that impacted franchises in terms of their ability to access capital to grow the base? I mean, have you seen that coming in? Because we have seen a tightening up on the investor side where they're not deploying capital, they're holding on to cash, they're sitting on cash, so it's ready to be deployed. Are you forecasting anything on that side where you think that it might slow down the rate of openings at all?
No, and it's, you got to remember the kind of the dollars you're talking about, right? If you're talking about, Catterton investing $200 million and the rate's up 4 points, right? That's different than a franchisee of mine borrowing $200,000 and the rate's up 4 points, right? So there's the rate and then there's the dollars, which create sheer dollars, right? So it's kind of like, what is that headwind that you're really talking about? And so sure, the rates have gone up a couple of points, but our average franchisee is borrowing somewhere in the, $300,000 range, right? And so if it goes up 3 points, is that a make or break decision from them to open or not open, right? Of course, nobody likes the higher rates, but it's not enough sheer dollars to keep people from opening.
And speaking about your franchisees, I've been following Xponential for years. And when I've looked at it before, obviously now that you're public, everything's out in the open. You're able to see everything.
Yep.
And I've really kind of recognized the strong performance of your stores, right, in general, and especially putting my MBA hat on, looking at other kind of businesses like a McDonald's or Burger King, but pick any one of the industry. You've actually performed really well, right?
Yep.
Both in our industry, but also outside. I mean, speak a bit about how performance is viewed in the public market for those who might not be as informed or this is not their everyday job.
Yeah, so I think it starts with unit level economics, right? And people will look at numbers and say, oh, you had 100 and something stores, close or whatever it might be. And if you think about it, there's typically that standard bell curve, right? So you'll have 10% of the stores that are challenged, right? And trying to figure out how to be an operator, how to be an entrepreneur, right? How to market and sell and manage employees, because it's a franchise business, right? Yeah. These people coming into the business have worked in business before, but most likely haven't owned a business before or run a business before. And I tell people it's completely different to be a flight attendant than it is a pilot, right? You can watch 1,000 takeoff and landings. You could be in turbulence. You could be in the same plane. But when you're in that left chair and you're actually in charge of the plane and you're in charge of the passengers, it is a completely different feeling. It's more like jumping out of the plane than riding in it, right? Yeah. And so you'll have the bottom 10%, and you also have the top 10%, right? You'll have, and so when you look at our 3,000 stores, right, that are open, you'll have, hundreds on the left side and hundreds on the far right side and the 80% in the middle, right? And so that's why we look at things like average unit volume, and we look at things like same store sales, right? We don't just look at how big is our system growing. We look at how big is an individual store comping, right? Mm-hmm. How are they comping, year over year? How are the vintages comping, right? Because you don't want to just have new stores coming in. But as we look at 2023, like our cohorts in 2023, as stores were opening and as we got further into the year, the stores are opening stronger, right? We're seeing that across brands. Now, the great thing about portfolios, of course, is that you'll have brands come in and out. You'll have modalities come in and out of favor, right? Like cycling right now is down globally about 25%, right? Depending on if you want to talk to Gym Pass or Class Pass or other aggregators or, IHRSA data or wherever it might be, it's in that range, right? And there's a lot of data to support that. And so that modality, what do you do, right? I mean, Flywheel closed 100% of their locations. SoulCycle, I think, closed about 50% of their locations. Right. We've closed somewhere in the 25% of our locations, right? And so when you look at it, you say, okay, we're faring better in cycling, but we're not trying to, figure out why Cycle Bar is having difficulty. We're trying to figure out globally why people aren't cycling, right? So you're not just trying to solve for something, micro in your portfolio. You're trying to solve for something macro. Okay. Right. So, you'll see that the brands, that they perform better than consumer typically performs, and they perform better than kind of their industry peers because we do have a massive support system.
You are fairly unique in this space, and if you had to sort of explain what would be the 80-20, what is that 20% that you guys have got that have helped to create this success? Is it part of the team? Is it part of the fact that you've got this portfolio approach here? How would you describe some of those key things that have made you such a success in this space where a lot of people have really struggled?
Yeah, I mean, look, like any good recipe, there's a lot that goes into it, right? It's not just the flour, the chocolate chips, or how long you bake it. It's kind of all of it, right? That makes it taste good. But ultimately, the leverage that we have today, right? It was different as we were building the portfolio, but ultimately, the leverage we have today and the proof points we have today, right? And so, you've got CMOs of 10 brands sharing best practices. You've got presidents of 10 brands sharing best practices. You've got the leverage of 3,000 stores in 23 countries and opening 500 to 600 new units on top of that year over year over year. I mean, when you look at the backlog we have right now, we have a couple thousand domestic units that are bought and paid for, and about another 1,000 contractually obligated to open internationally, right? So you look at where we are today at 3,000 open with another 3,000 sold, opening 500 to 600. People ask, what does the next 3 to 5 years look like, right? And from a studio opening level, we'll double in size, right? If we're doing 550, the easy math is 550 by 5. We'll get through the balance of that, but we'll add to that as we bring on new brands, right? And as we sell and we open and kind of head toward that holistic approach of, how do we handle weight management, right? How do we handle burning calories, right? How do we handle strength training, right? We've added strength training to Cycle Bar, strength training class in cycling, right? Which are like, how does that work, right? And so we did that at Pure Bar. We added strength training to Pure Bar. And as you look at these GLP-1s and things coming into the network, you're going to have the American Medical Association, people like Optum taking looks at, this burns 50% of your lean muscle mass. Like, well, that's not good, So what do you do about that? So it's going to be coupling, the workout with the nutrition, right? And strength training, for people to be able to come. So we can kind of see some of those things into the future. We've been looking at Lindora for 2 years. Just kind of watching that part of the business. And, we didn't want to buy something that was just GLP-1s or just HRT or just IV bag or any of that kind of type stuff. We wanted to buy something that was a sort of holistic approach. And that's what we love about it because, the material part of the Lindora business is weight management, right? It's education and coaching. to really get people to where they need to be.
Yeah, is that on that Lindora acquisition and the it's a different model than I guess getting people to come in and do a workout class. And in some ways, it seems as though it's easier for people to come in and have a shot of something. It's not pain. It's not like having to go through a workout. And once you're involved in that, it's almost like a regular thing that you come back to. So do you see sort of rounding out the model of trying to get people to do things that in a lot of cases they don't always want to do on a regular basis, with things where they're involved and they have to come back more frequently, rounds out the model, which a lot of, if you think about the exercise or the fitness industry, that's one of the things that they've struggled to do for a long time, keep people coming back. What's your thoughts about combining those two, and how did you sort of approach that acquisition?
Yeah, so we looked at it two ways. One, the upside, right, of success. So typically our, 90% of our members are female, right? And so typically in the world of female, kind of call it diet exercise success, right, there's scale weight, right, that people look at. And then there's what I call vanity. How do I look? How do I feel? How do my clothes fit? Like everything kind of in that category. And if you go into a Pure Barre and you go to Pure Barre 3 days a week or 4 days a week, talk about reoccurring, right? But you eat ice cream 7 days a week, you're technically going to gain weight from going to Pure Barre, right? And that could be how it was viewed. So there's some downside risk in the regard that, we probably have, 12 to 15,000 instructors across the US, right, at any one given time. And what do they know about nutrition, right? And so if success for us is scale, weight, and vanity, but 80% or 90%, whoever you want to talk to, of that scale, weight, and vanity is diet, then there's some risk in that for us, right? So I looked at the sort of downside risk of us not taking on some nutritional education and benefit piece. Also, Lindora, although 31 locations, once at scale, they have no one to refer anybody for strength training. Right. So it becomes great. Like a GLP-1 is not the end all be all. That is supposed to be a 12 to 18 month script at best, right? It's supposed to be a catalyst. You look at this back in the, the 70s and the Gold's Gym Venice days, where you had Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? Like, well, they could take steroids back then and they're kind of open about it. But the guy also worked out 7 hours a day, right? He didn't take steroids and sit at home, right? He didn't take steroids at home and eat ice cream or do those kind of things. So the reality is all of those are catalysts for some people to get into that weight loss journey, but that's making people then go to the gym, right? Like you need a reason for why you lost all this weight all of a sudden, and you need to replace that lean muscle mass, and it needs to be sustainable. People have nausea on GLP-1s, they have all these side effects. So it isn't kind of like I said, where it's like, people are making it out to be like, you get this little, prick, and then all of a sudden you have 6-pack abs. Like that's not how it works. There still is no silver bullet. The silver bullet is diet and exercise over time. Like that's the silver bullet. And so this can help be a catalyst for that, but the two businesses will work in conjunction together.
Well, Anthony, I've got one last question for you, and I know you're pressed on time, so again, appreciate you coming on.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Looking at one, I think the Lindora acquisition brings unique challenges in terms of scale, because you have 31 locations all in Southern California.
Yep.
There's state-by-state things that you're going to have to work through. You've done it before, so I have no question that you'll do it again.
Yep.
And when I see what you built with Xponential, when you founded the company, you kind of built this best practices. You've almost built the OS, if I could call it that, of wellness. Now, with Lindora, you've kind of tagged that on. How do you see that OS evolving? And is it about adding more modalities into Xponential? Is it about taking best practices from a well-being perspective across your brands? And what's the next step there?
Yeah, it's going to be really all of that. And you're right. That's what, I said long ago, that, we created a marketing and sales engine, right? Just disguised as yoga or Pilates or, whatever it might be. So we do have that OS today. We did it with Stretch Lab, right? When I bought Stretch Lab, 3 locations, everybody said, what's a stretching gym? Nobody's going to go to a gym to get stretched, right? Well, at 600K AUV, 500 open, 900 sold, people aren't saying that anymore, right? I literally had a conversation with the president of Stretch Lab on the way up here today, and we were talking about that. Like we're not in this like validation mode anymore. Once you're the largest and the money is there and people are doing it, and it's something really unique, right? That existed before, but we just kind of went and took the scale. And think you'll see that same exact thing with Lindora. As far as corporate practice of medicine, we liked that it was all in Southern California. California is the toughest. It is the most restrictive. So it's kind of like if we've cracked the code here for 50 years on 31 locations, right? One being in Washington, 30 in California. Then I don't want to say that it's no big deal, right? But it gets easier, right, as you've done it before and as you go to other states. And so, we've kind of hired the best of the best to make sure that, we put franchisees in a good position in that corporate practice of medicine. But, you've seen Restore do it. You've seen The Joint do it 1,000 times. It's not, the CPOM model is not new. And so we'll adapt and adopt to kind of how others have done it and then scale Lindora. And we've already begun selling them, right?
Oh, great.
So we've already got stores sold and people out looking for real estate, and we're kind of doing that across the country. And so we're happy about that. 50% of our openings, almost 50% of our openings this last year were from existing franchisees. And so, existing franchisees are excited about putting a Lindora next to their stores. I was talking to a Rumble candidate a couple days ago who actually, of all things, owns McDonald's franchises in Texas. And they're looking to open a Rumble, and she's like, and then I'd like to put a Lindora next to that. Yeah. Right. And so you're seeing that today. There is a, single proof point, but there is a Lindora that sits next to a Club Pilates in a retail shopping center in SoCal. Right. And so if you can do it once, you can do it again. And so, we'll continue to sell and scale those openings. You'll see those openings starting Q4 this year. Okay.
So I've got a final question for you, Anthony. What's it been like for Anthony going through this exponential journey? You've been in the industry for a long time, and you had success before this. But how's that journey been as an entrepreneur? And how would you describe that to other people that are probably trying to get to where you've been able to get to in your career?
Yeah, look, people, mostly my family or, my wife will give me credit for being really smart, but I don't view it like that at all. I view it like we block and tackle and we work hard. I view, between 0 and 100, wherever it is that you want to get to, that's a series of decisions and executions that have to get done. It's not time. A lot of people are like, well, for the next 3 to 5 years, it's like we sit at home for the next 3 to 5 years, nothing changes, right? And so I'm still a massive driver in the business. I'm still in the weeds. My wife will tell you I don't have any hobbies. I do this and I take care of my kids, right? And I got 2 amazing little daughters. And so for me, I get up in the morning, I take them to school. I go to war, right? And fight to do the best I can for the business and for the franchisees and the shareholders. And then, kiss my daughters goodbye at night and kind of start all over, right? But the adventure of going public was something that I wanted. It's a long-term story. It's not a short-term story. And so, we'll continue to prove out the exponential model. But, I ask people all the time, like, who out there is, selling 800, opening 557 and comping and doing it across 10 brands or 11 brands. And so I like doing what looks like the impossible and continue to prove that out. So, as long as the challenges are still here, we can keep overcoming them. That's what keeps me competing and fired up.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time, Anthony. I appreciate you being here today.
Oh, thank you. It was good.
Thank you.
So, Matthew, we have Philipp Roesch-Schlanderer. Did I say that correctly?
Almost.
Okay. Co-founder and CEO of EGYM on Lifts this week. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me. I'm a huge fan of your podcast.
That's great to hear. We have a lot to cover today. Matthew, I'll have you kick it off.
Well, I've been following EGYM for a while, and it's one of those brands that you hear a lot about, and it's all positive. And whenever I talk when I talk to people in the industry, it's like they're expanding, they're doing this. But I've never, probably because I've never really had to dig into understanding what you guys do. I think I know a little bit about the product and the machines and very on a very, very basic level. But I thought what would be good is, what is EGYM from the founder's perspective?
Yeah, very happy to provide you some more intel here. Maybe I start by my founder story because that explains what EGYM is. So I was born and raised in Germany, played a lot of soccer, then moved to the United States for my studies. And here my friends at university pulled me into the university's gym for the first time in my life. And I really didn't know how to use that gym. They would tell me, yeah, you step on some cardio machines and you hit this quick start button. And then you do strength machines. You would probably do like 3 sets of 15 reps. You try to have like as heavy weight as possible. And then, you do that. And it felt to me really random. Like that didn't feel really personalized. And then when I finished my workout, I was always wondering, did I win today? In soccer, I was very competitive. And for the score count, I was willing to do everything. And for me, the gym always felt a little bit like, in soccer, I was used to do sprint training twice a week, but I didn't really like it. I just wanted to score on Saturdays. But in the gym, the experience to me felt like you just do sprint training and you never score on Saturdays. And so I thought, wow, there must be something done with technology, which is my background. I then digged more into this industry, and I found that like if you really try to be very much zoomed out, there are 3 groups of people that go to the gym. One group, we call them the expert users. They know exactly what they're doing. Like they're really renting from us equipment as much as possible, as close as possible, as cheap as possible, or with a great experience surrounding it, roughly 10%. Then there is the engaged users, how we call them. These are people that don't know what they're doing, but they're willing to move mountains to be successful. They buy personal training hours. They would maybe have a Peloton at home and really do everything possible to be successful. Also maybe 10%. And then there are these 80% of people like myself that really don't know how to work out properly, but they're also not willing to buy personal training or don't have the means for it. And those are the people that, like me, hit on the training floor and hit quick start buttons, do some 3 sets of 15 reps of a random weight, wonder like, did it make sense today? Maybe go low intensity and then feel like they have now deserved a huge meal afterwards, like all these issues. And I felt like, wow, for those 80%, there should be some solution possible with technology, assuming that you can take technology and provide an experience almost as great as if a personal trainer would help you, just without the human element. So kind of that's also why we think we can even push PT services further with our data. Maybe we can talk about that later. But first one is like for those 80% really to level up the experience. I then thought, wow, this industry is actually quite small, the gym industry, compared to the value we generate. Because we have an influence, in my view, on the healthcare market. And healthcare is the largest market in the world. And more than 50% of the money spent is on chronic conditions. And the gyms would have a perfect right to win here to support healthcare, to transition from repair to prevention. And I was wondering, why is the gym not ready for it? And my assumption was maybe because for those 80%, we don't really have a good solution. And so then basically I started with building EGYM. I looked up surveys at the time and checked what are the top 2 training goals, because I needed to start somewhere. And the top 2 training goals were at the time, number 1, weight loss, and number 2, surprisingly to me, musculoskeletal diseases. And then, not knowing anything about fitness, I just asked medical experts, because now I need to start with one thing. So what would be the one advice you would give to people that want to lose weight or want to tackle musculoskeletal diseases? And their answer was strength training. Okay, then I looked into strength and I thought, okay, how should be a strength training for those 80% users look like in the future? And I came to the conclusion it needs to be, you walk on the training floor, all the equipment knows you, sets up automatically, guides you through an optimal workout based on all the data we know about you. And once you finish your workout, we provide you with meaningful insights on how you've been able during that workout to improve your goal or your health. Because one of the views we have too is workout success is sports science plus behavioral science. And behavioral science plays a role in during the experience, but also how can I present the data so that I can give you your game day. And then we started with strength training. We designed this product exactly like I just mentioned. It adjusts automatically. It knows your data, walks you through an optimal workout, and presents you information about what you've been able to achieve today. I then realized, we need to take this experience really to the entire training floor. So next step then was, after we have successfully introduced our smart strength machine to the market, to really expand to the entire training floor. And we started building partnerships with companies like Matrix, Live Fitness, Precore, 130 different gym vendors in the world partner with us to think of how can we personalize the experience inside the entire gym, on the entire training floor. We basically at EGYM always just look for things that happen on the training floor. We find it like there are amazing partners that do something like behind the counter, what we call it, like the member management softwares that we all integrate. But we're not doing this. We really focus only on the training floor and want to be basically a puzzle piece for gym operators to pick best of breed. So then I worked on these partnerships. I brought also like to these cardio machines a software that would replace the quick start with a smart start. So we would know your VO2 max and your training goal and prescribe basically a workout routine on these Live Fitness, Precore, Matrix consoles that really makes a lot of sense for you. And we will later also be able to show that data to you. We then developed our personal trainer app, where we included the personal trainers into the ecosystem, presenting data to them so that their pitch really is like top notch and not just kind of talking about the weather and trying to sell something, but really like, hey, Matthew, I see you have muscle imbalances. Why don't we fix that together? We feel this is more modern. And then like kind of we kept going, and then we started to also talk to employers. Hey, are you interested in investments into employee wellness? So you're sending your employees to gyms, and we can make sure in those gyms that your employees work out safely and effectively. And we can report back the data to you. And they start to be really interested. And so this is basically how EGYM has developed. And this is also, quite frankly, how I've met, for example, Chris and Rob, who just recently joined us. They were like for many years my partners.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And you clearly have a vision. And it sounds like to me, and look, I'm relatively new to the industry. And I think like you, I came into the industry as an outsider and kind of had to take a really innovative kind of approach towards how we help transform lives. And you've certainly done that. EGYM continues to evolve. You are certainly not done. And I've been in this industry for just over almost 12 years. And in that time, I've kind of seen EGYM, yes, come up with the first strength product, and I kind of see you then going to the gym floor. You really won over partnerships. And that's a tough thing to navigate, right? Because in one hand, you're working with partners like Precore and Matrix and Life Fitness, but on the other hand, you also have a competitive product in your smart strength line. I've always been curious about that, and I'm sure you have too. Talk a bit about navigating that kind of conflict, because there could be some there. I know you add a lot of value, but talk about that piece of it.
So, very important topic, and we really believe, so our number one stakeholder is the gym operator, and number two are all our partners. What the way we deal with this, we always realized, like at the beginning, I thought coming more like with an IT background to the industry, I will quickly have all APIs and then do something cool and everyone will love it. And then I realized that basically when I entered this industry, everyone more had the mindset of kind of everyone was building a little bit their own little kingdom. And our strategy with our partners basically is to always pick the high road. We really invested heavily into building trust. If there's like one specific case where basically our partners or us have to lose some money or something, it's going to be typically us to give up. We had to do this initially. In the meantime, we have such a trusted partnership that we kind of figure it all out together. But we would basically make sure that our partners feel really valued and that we also think how we can elevate their business, right? Yes, of course, our smart strength machines take away space from selectorized strength machines, clearly. However, our technology makes it much more attractive, maybe, for example, to buy high-end cardio consoles, because the experience just finally gets really very much improved by this kind of full data platform where the cardio console plays a role. And so all of a sudden, kind of everyone is a winner. The gym has a better experience, EGYM can make revenues, and, for example, Matrix can make revenues too.
You were very successful recently in raising some money in a pretty tough climate. The fitness industry, I don't think, is probably seen as though it's in a particularly great space. Well, tell us a little bit about how you managed to convince people to invest in your company, and what did investors see in you guys that they may not be seeing in other businesses at the moment?
I think investors right now look into the fitness industry as an industry that has a huge potential, like longevity, healthcare costs. Like, no one questions that these are top themes in the world for the future. But investors, especially tech investors, always have looked into the gym industry a little bit reluctantly because there wasn't so much technology going on. Like, there was a lot of money invested, I don't know, in like marketing automation or so. But then they walk on the training floor and it feels pretty analog. And we were able now in our first market in Germany to really show how the future may look like and what is possible with much more connected products. We are now at EGYM, I think, in 25% of all German gyms. And so we could show like the gym operators make more money with us, the users have more success with regard to their health, and then like health plan providers, employers show real interest in spending more money on it. But of course, also investors look at our historic numbers and how we've been also kind of dealing with challenges. And I'm like really the most proud of my team. They are like really, really great people, very passionate about the industry and going the extra mile to make sure that you know our mission is one day accomplished, and for sure not kind of entering a stopgap or so, because COVID for us, living 100% from in-person gyms was really difficult. However, we managed as a company to have in 2020 and 2021 the same revenue number as 2019, because we kind of looked really who has committed gyms, how can we help gyms that like it still makes sense to buy from us, what can we do for employers that their employees can work out and so on. And so I think it's the mix of we have proven as a team that we can deal with challenges. We have proven to show strong numbers. These numbers are not based on overselling, but our customers are successful, their customers are successful. And while we execute like on good numbers now, we are actually trying to achieve something much greater for the entire industry and want to be the tide that lifts all boats. And that starts then to be exciting for investors because they see a clear path how EGYM could be that tide that lifts all boats. And if we can have just a minor impact as the fitness industry to the health industry, like, changing something there 1% will double us. So you just need to work all together on this. And that's also, the theme that people like about us. We are now launching, our EGYM Genius, our AI product, which is really only possible because we work with 130 gym brands together. We aggregate the data and use all the products, even the analog products, to really have all of a sudden the ability to provide an AI workout.
How are the investors looking at you? Are they looking at you as a fitness equipment business, or are they looking at you with, like you mentioned, data quite a bit? Are they looking at you a data organization, like
more the technology company?
Technology company, yeah. How do they view what you're doing?
They clearly view us as a technology platform in the gym industry.
Well, I'll add, look, I mean, our companies are about to enter like a partnership, and we've had an opportunity. I've had a chance to meet people beyond just you, and I can attest to the fact that your team's fantastic, incredibly talented, and the passion resonates on both sides. So that's something that we saw early on, and we certainly appreciate. When I kind of look at your product mix and kind of what you offer today, you first hit on the assessment piece, which I think you do both from the app. You've got a good in-gym product, which I've started to see in more gyms. You then kind of move the journey along to equipment. You talked a bit about the cardio side and Selectorize. And then you are now building out this AI Genius product, which I saw a preview of a little bit in Riyadh a couple of weeks ago. I think it's brilliant in what you've done over there. What are the gaps that you see in that circle? Because you've addressed the assessment piece to kind of identify your goals and where you need to go from where you are. And then you're taking the people through. But but I could see the wheels turning in your head. I know that there's gaps that you're looking to fill. What do you think's coming next?
So first of all, what I find very important to always discuss with gym operators and their teams is when I entered the industry, I had a lot of people basically telling me, I believe in functional training, or I have this view, because they just like this and this and that. And I always had the view that it's all about the customer journey. It's our dream to bring everyone at some point to functional training. But we cannot have Aunt Anna, who never worked out in her life, who will not buy any personal training, to start right away with functional training. So we need to get her on a path that works for her to achieve that. And so every member journey starts with understanding where is this member, and then kind of onboarding her on the right moment to help her progress. And that's why we first started with circuits, smart strength as a circuit. Now we have open mode, which is like smart strength machines without circuit mode. And of course, the first session always should be assessment. Like, where are you today? Let's establish that view. Let's collect the data. That data should be informing what we prescribe for you now. And the changes in the data should be then having an influence on how we change your plan, your prescription, and so on, and the intensity of your workout and all of that. And so Genius is this idea that basically you walk on the training floor. In this moment, we consider all the data we know about you and prescribe based on your preferences the perfect workout based on all the equipment that is in that specific gym available, right? We will ask you, tell me what's your training goal, tell me how often do you want to work out per week and how many minutes per workout. And by choosing those decisions, you have basically also chosen your trade-offs. Like, of course, if you give me just 15 minutes, you will achieve less than if you had given me 45. That's your trade-off decision. But now you're in this gym, and for example, you may have chosen to jog to the gym. So I know you're already warmed up. My AI will not cut into your 30 minutes that you have maybe given to me for a warm-up, and you can go right on your workout. But if you haven't jogged to the gym, I need to first provide you with a warm-up, right? If you chose yesterday to go running, we will do 100% strength training today, right? And so all of a sudden, we can really have an influence. And the important thing here is we need to really feed this AI with as much as possible data. And one interesting element here is from our strength machines, the strength tests. If you don't feed in strength tests, like how did your muscle develop on all these different muscle groups, even if you just want to do functional training, no AI will be able to update your functional training plan because the AI doesn't receive the feedback. What did it do to your muscles, to every specific muscle? So, for example, now we use our strength test to serve 100% functional training users. They just need to give us per machine a second of strength test every few weeks. And then they don't have any headache anymore and can have the perfect functional training workout. Because one of the things we realized was what all users in gyms have in common is that they want to exhaust themselves, but they don't want to think about the workout. It's like, the GPS in the car. You just want to put the pedal to the metal, and you don't want to have a scientific understanding on why in this moment the roundabout was more efficient than the traffic light. You just want to kind of put the pedal to the metal and be there at the fastest possible time and think about something else. And pretty much that's true for every gym user, from the beginner to the expert. And we want to support that. But to your question, basically from beginner to expert, it starts always with the data, and that leads to the experience.
What's your vision with the data? Because I can see two sides of this. You know, if I'm a club operator or even an individual, and you're starting to see this with a lot of the social media companies, it's like, well, how much? I suppose at some point you can have so much information. You can arguably have more information than anyone in the fitness industry, any club chain, on what people do, on what their habits are, which is, I guess, great for EGYM. On the opposite side, it's like, okay, if you're integrating with people like Precor and Matrix, I can also see that being quite a concern that, quietly you guys are almost becoming this dominant player. How are you balancing the concerns people might have with the amount of data that you end up collecting and the influence that will give EGYM with the sort of collaboration between health clubs and other manufacturers?
Yeah, so we have been now in the market for 14 years, and especially at the beginning in Germany, there were lots of concerns raised about what is EGYM doing with the data. Especially, Germans are very concerned about privacy, and we have never used it against any gym operator or partner. Rather, we always use it to just advance the experience. If I can go together with the entire industry after this multi-trillion healthcare market, why would I mess with like my friends and partners in this industry? You always find when people are kind of in a red ocean environment and they try to kind of bite from each other's margin, that's a problem. But I have set my strategy differently. I want to benefit. I want Live Fitness and Matrix and Precore and everyone else to excel too. Everyone who wants to partner, like absolutely everyone who wants to partner is invited to partner. And everyone should be basically really excel in what they do. We don't believe that one company is the best in every single product. There are companies that believe that they can be the best in every single thing, but that's not us. We believe, why would we even invest into ground up cardio equipment if there's like people like Matrix, Live Fitness, Precore that have this done for forever and they're so good at it? But we believe our software platform can still be beneficial for the amazing hardware they develop. So kind of I go after something bigger. And so it makes no sense to get kind of into trouble with my friends in this industry and rather see like, hey, how can everyone continue to benefit from kind of the pie getting bigger versus sharing it differently?
And being a first mover is really difficult. I mean, I think from hearing you speak today, a lot of what you said, one person that comes to mind to me is Musk and what he's done with Tesla. When he came up with the concept, but he didn't invent the electric car. The electric car was invented almost 100 years ago. But what he did was to identify the opportunity, bring it mainstream, and then more importantly, build the infrastructure. And then he said, I'm opening up the standard for anyone to be able to use. And when I hear you talk, it sounds like that's the path you're taking. So look, we're building out the ecosystem. I'm investing in the infrastructure at your expense, but I'm welcoming everyone else to come in and use it, should you want to play in the same field.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to be basically, in the past, it has been difficult for all these players, our 130 connected partners, to really satisfy operators with this interoperability. And what we are now saying is, hey, the nice thing is, for example, if you are a Matrix and you and a local gym in Germany has, for example, Magic Line as a member management software, and as soon as they use EGYM, you don't need to have a dedicated additional API into the member management. With our platform, you just directly connected with everything. So it's also taking away headache from all these players because they offer with EGYM interoperability across the board. Like all of a sudden, Matrix is connected with InBody without the requirement to build their own API, as an example. And we give this API platform away completely for free. We charge like very little fees, just basically for new partners, so that our costs are covered, but we don't have any fees like that to make money out of it. We just want to be this one interoperability platform because we believe fundamentally this will help us to achieve our goal to be a connected industry that can play a role in healthcare.
You mentioned healthcare, and when we were having conversations through the pandemic, it certainly seemed that the fitness industry was struggling to get the support they needed from a lot of governments because they were struggling to get the data about what actually going to health club really, really did in terms of improving people's health. And with what you're doing, it sounds like you're collecting a lot of useful information. Is there anything that you're doing to be able to work to get support from local governments, to get support from healthcare and investment, to be able to show that, look, if people are doing this so many times a week or over a course of a year, this really, really is making a difference, and you should be taking this industry more seriously?
Yeah, absolutely. We have like a working title about this project. We call it "Workout Like a Pill."
Like a
pill.
pill, right?
Pill,
I'm gonna
like
come back
your
to that in a
medicine.
second. Yeah.
Sorry, what?
I'm going to come back to the pill comment in a second. but-
Yeah, okay. So because fundamentally, how does pharma work? You prove with one specific medicine that whenever a human body takes it, it does exactly the same thing in this body, and that is proven. So now in our industry, we have like thousands of studies. This is how you tackle back pain. This is very helpful when you have prediabetes. This is helpful when you have problems with your knees and so on. But the problem is now we expect government and health plan providers to send people into the gyms, and then in this gym they do something totally different than what is proven in a study. So that's like basically I have proven now that aspirin works against headache, and now just I want you to just prescribe any kind of medicine, right? Because it's proven here. And so what we believe is once the gym is connected, we can basically replicate specific routines that have been proven in studies and can deliver this without variance, that when we send people to the gyms, they do exactly what has been proven in the study. And then we can report back the data. And so all of a sudden, it's prescribable. That's what we call workout like a pill.
It's a very interesting vision. I like, it's amazing like where you're able to go with what you're doing and technology. I don't know, like, are there any, you probably know this space better than anyone, but are there any other people that are looking at this, or are you? I know the machines themselves are probably not totally unique, but is this philosophy and this vision you've got relatively unique in the commercial fitness industry?
I mean, from what I know and all that I've been learning more recently from EGYM through this partnership journey, I think it's the different pieces together. So if you distill down and kind of take the different products that EGYM has, sure, you could find solutions that I've seen in the industry to offer the assessment. You have, add-ons to selectorized machines now that, could make it quote unquote smart. You have another one that might do the ecosystem. But I think what is missing is all the components around, integrating all of that and then opening up other partners to come in. That is unique coming from an equipment manufacturer that I have not seen yet. I want to just double click on the pill comment in a second. We've got a funny story here for Matthew and I regarding one of your recent executives, Chris Clausen, who you just brought on, who we're both big fans of. We were in Riyadh about 2 weeks ago at this point, right? And suffering from major jet lag. So I see Chris downstairs and he's like, Mo, I said, how are you feeling? I said, I'm a little bit tired. He's like, I've got the answer. Give me 2 minutes. He runs up to his room, he comes back down, and he gives me 3 pills. 3 pills.
Blue pills.
Blue pills. Blue pills. Said, take this before you go to sleep. I'm like, I've never taken a sleeping pill before. Take this before you go to sleep. The next morning I wake up and I show Matthew my aura score. It was like a 94, the highest I've ever gotten. I texted Chris, I'm like, you are like the Wizard of Oz. Matthew's like, I need some of that. So we text Chris, and Chris, we need more of those magic pills. And then Matthew, you had incredible sleep with the pills as well. So I think the pill concept resonates, and your new leader is helping us in many different ways, which has been fantastic.
He's just a fantastic person, always trying to help.
Always trying to help in whatever way we can. So hopefully I'm not hooked now. But looking at the audience that we have and the comments that we get, there are a lot of founders. There's a lot of entrepreneurs. There's a lot of young parents. You're a recent father. Congratulations to that.
Thank you.
I've got 3 kids. Matthew's got kids. Speak a bit about just the entrepreneurial journey that you've had, going from the vision to raising money, to raising a big round, and now having a child. How do you manage all of that?
I think it's all about setting priorities and be very conscious about setting those priorities. So kind of not slipping into your day and randomly end up here and there. So one of the things I do, for example, is every day before I end my business day, I write down what are the things that I want to achieve tomorrow. And then like my inbox will definitely not interfere with my priorities for the day, right? And so I'm trying to set clear like trade-off decisions also and set focus. And that's also, for example, one of the reasons why I brought on board Chris and Rob. I realized I need much more people knowledgeable about the global industry and also helping EGYM to learn more and to elevate our conversation with operators around the world, because it was too much also tied to me as a person. So when I realized like, hey, my first child will be born in January, I was traveling like crazy in Q4 because I wanted to do all the meetings that I would have otherwise been doing in January and February and March. And during this, like, I think in Q4, I had 7 business nights at home. I realized, like, yeah, okay, this is, clearly EGYM has entered a new phase. And now I need to replace myself again.
Yeah.
As I always do. Because otherwise I will not be managing anymore to make the 3 things work every day that really have the most important impact on EGYM. And so I would always say, basically, doing things sequential is faster than in parallel. Being clear about who you are and who you're not as a company, for example. So we don't need to worry about cardio trends because we have our partners, as an example. And so be really conscious about what you do and never be like opportunistic. Like, people would say, like, I can make this new machine, I can sell this, let's just do it. No, we have a clear strategy on who we are and who we are not. And the same is also true for how I manage my time.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today and sharing information about EGYM. I'm curious to watch what happens. Although you've been around for 14 years, it really sounds as though you're at the beginning of quite an exciting journey. So I'm fascinated to stay in touch and see what the future holds. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time and your invitation. And I'm a huge fan of this podcast. It feels a little bit like I'm a little fanboy now all of a sudden on the TV.
Well, thanks so much, Philip.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks. That was great.